Broken Thing, Chapter 10. Garrus stayed with Cara in the med bay, sleeping in a chair next to her bed. He was frantic and jittery, but didn't look that way. Being in a room with her scent made him calmer, but set other parts of him off, wanting to be closer. Russ had come down to see her after setting course, assured that there was no pursuit from Beckenstein. They set in a few hours later at the Citadel, where they were now docked. Liara was coordinating the negotiations to take over the site at Beckenstein. He left the medbay briefly for that discussion. He warned her not to touch Cara. Liara nodded, seemed to understand, said that was something to be expected. Garrus had enough experience with sexual abuse and slavery survivors at CSEC to know this was true. They didn't discuss it. That Lal was even remotely sound of body and mind was a miracle. He counted that miracle in bold and held it close. Everything else would wait. Please, let there be an everything else. No sign of Thane Krios. All frequencies and contacts dead, confirmed by Beckenstein, who considered that a termination of contract. They would not confirm those frequencies or any way to track him, but they did confirm that whatever they had been, they were unresponsive. Cara was not Cara. She was Lal. Of course she was. She was Lal, and he could not touch her. She hadn't said for how long. She had told him not to ask. He didn't ask. Garrus would not leave the med bay for long, and Cara didn't ask him to leave. She had eventually accepted food he'd watched her swallow before he left to get some food himself and to give some status reports on her to others that he did not want her to overhear. Nobody asked him to leave. Karen worked around him. Cara didn't really need all that much in the way of medical care, but with nerve damage, Karen wanted to be cautious and give Cara extra time to rest, just in case her leg muscles were affected, weakness or numbness causing a fall if they gave way suddenly, just in case delayed shock manifested itself. It didn't appear that Cara would be succumbing to shock. She was poised, polished, and busy trying to reassure others, as always. Normal for her. Normal for her after she died. Her attitude was that if she could shake off death, she could shake this off. He didn't want her to be wrong. Didn't think she would be wrong. He and Karen had both assumed Cara was lying about how much pain she was in. Karen didn't give her more painkillers, but did choose to keep her under observation for 2 days. By then, Russ would be out of the commander's cabin, her things moved back in. Garrus had supervised breaking down her belongings and removing them. He'd supervised that everything went back exactly as it had been. Russ had done it, and reported it done to Garrus, without comment, without complaint, handing the ship back over. Now Russ had no command. The Ferox had been lost 2 months ago to a Geth ambush the Normandy had escaped with her stealth. Cara's return to life, Spectre status, and command was something Garrus had insisted upon every time her name had come up. Garrus, once again in this case, was the Council, and everyone knew it. Anderson would not argue. Tevos would not argue. Valerne would exact a price, and Garrus would pay it. She was alive, and she was as stubborn as she had ever been. So was he. Russ had done well in command, but they needed Shepard. Dr. Itran did stop by to speak to Cara, stood politely at the door of the medbay until she noticed him, which was quickly. She'd been dozing, and Garrus had quietly moved his chair against the wall to stay out of Karen's way. Cara smiled at him when he entered, Gagarin's face solemn. He stepped forward tentatively. "You wished to see me, Commander Shepard?" Her smile was bright. "Yes, please. Would you like a seat?" "I will stand, thank you." "I wanted to thank you." "You are welcome." There was a moment where they both looked at each other, and Garrus saw that awkwardness in her, Cara's inability to engage in small talk. Lal, always funny or blunt, looking at the face of a Drell that was not receptive to either. He imagined her decision tree. Had they met socially or professionally? Blank space, question mark. Should they discuss sexual slavery? Blank space, question mark. Her hesitancy was oddly reflected in Itran, two lost souls, without a path of words around a roiling volcano of circumstance. Garrus realized when he and Cara had spoken he had kept to what she'd asked. He'd told her about the last 6 months. He hadn't asked her any questions. She hadn't asked about Itran. She knew nothing about Itran. Itran seemed to have nothing more to say. Garrus thought he might just turn and leave, but Cara rushed in to fill the silence. Please, Dr. Itran. Her hand reached out and rested on the Drell's forearm, and Garrus was inappropriately jealous, his fingers and thighs tightening at watching his bondmate touch another male voluntarily when she would not touch him. He tried to relax. Okay, it's an adjustment. She's alive. He's a doctor that saved her life, and Dr. Shakwas touches her, and it's not okay for me because she cares, not because she doesn't. Itran stepped closer to the bed so she did not have to reach for him, a gesture of accommodation and politeness, but she didn't let go of his forearm in response, and he looked uncomfortable. Cara said, I don't know how you ended up in that room. Would you please tell me? I was contracted by Thane to care for you. How did you know who I was? Commander Shepard, you saved my life on Darfé 8 years ago. I recognized your voice and your height. He smiled and said softly, even shyly, Your eyes are memorable no matter the face. There was a pause, and then he said more formally, I secured your blood, and I brought it to the counselor. Itran stood to the side, indicating Garrus, who leaned in and smiled. He arranged for your rescue. Garrus said, Team effort. I did less bleeding. Itran did not respond to that, but did ask tentatively, Has Ser Krios been apprehended? Garrus shook his head. No, he hasn't been seen. His estate will be secured and searched. Itran asked Garrus, And my associates? Safe. Cara asked, Associates? Safe how? Garrus explained. Krios arranged for the contract by threatening Kegarin's life and the lives of those he works and lives with. This did not surprise Cara in the least. I am so sorry, Dr. Itran. So you can't return to your old life. It is worth it, Commander Shepard, to see you restored to your ship. She asked him, Is there anything I can do? The counselor has offered an identity change. I am considering it. Garrus prompted seriously, You need to take it. You need to swap out your Omnitool. As you requested, it has been off since suppression on the estate. Cara asked speculatively, Would you consider staying on the Normandy, Dr. Itran? Both Garrus and Itran stared at her. She said, You're brave and lacking in options. The least I can do is offer you an option. Garrus was busy thinking, in what capacity, but it appeared Itran wasn't thinking anything but no. I thank you, Commander Shepard, but I believe I am unsuitable to heroics. You and I disagree on that point. That is kind. If there's anything I can do for you. You saved my life, Commander Shepard. The last 8 years of my life were what you could do for me, what you did for me. She hesitated, both of them awkward again, her face with the particular blankness she had when she was thinking hard. She said thoughtfully, So we both need new Omnitools. And then asked, Edie? Yes, Commander Shepard? Do we still have Omnitools on board? Spares I worked on? They should have been in my cabin. Yes, they are in inventory. Great. Please assign one to Dr. Kegarin Etron before he leaves the ship. He's in need of a new one. Assign the other to me. Ask Dr. Chakwas to implant it. Make sure they're linked. He's leaving us, and that is a shame. I will do that, Commander. Dr. Etran, you have my thanks, the thanks of everyone on board. I will give you my contact as well. If you need anything, please let me know. Cara smiled, and Etran looked haunted, his new Omni-tool casually given a direct line to a Spectre and a helpful AI. Garrus thought Kegarin looked like he'd been given a brand new skycar, one with a load of Ezo in the trunk after having been asked how did he feel about biotics. Kegarin looked like he was trying to calculate the long-term costs of not having a life and having Commander Shepard know where he was at all times and what that meant to his future life expectancy. Poor guy. Kegarin replied, "That is most generous and kind of you both. Thank you for your concern." Garrus was not going to laugh at him, but he was tempted to give him his contact as well and invite him to a poker game. Joker would like that. Don't be mean, Vicarian. The guy's trying. Cara squeezed the Drell's forearm and said, "We're at the Citadel. Please take the counselor up on the offer to have a new identity." "As you wish, Commander Shepard." Garrus said, "I'll get that started. New identity, new Omni-tool, and you can begin a new life. You don't have much in the way of money, but I can take care of that. You're a gentleman of independent means, as of now. If you want any job on the Citadel, ask me." He wouldn't invite him to poker, but he would be available. "Edie, please ensure Dr. Etran's Omni-tool is also linked to mine." Edie responded, "Of course, Counselor." Etran, having blanched further, more Ezo loaded into the trunk, said, "Thank you, sir." "Yes, sir." Garrus smiled at Cara, who smiled back. Garrus looked at her and said to Etran, "Maybe take a little time off." Etran bowed, detached, and excused himself. Cara watched him leave, smiling. Garrus said, "Take it easy on the guy, Lal. He's not cut out for this." She shrugged and said, "You didn't see him. He was good. Really good. Whose idea was the ultrasound?" He dragged his chair back over to her. "That was his. We refined it, and he tested it several times. We couldn't be sure which components he would be given. It was a good idea. He executed." "Yeah, he did. I'm grateful. I just think maybe give the guy a break." She looked innocent and said, "I just gave him an Omni-tool. So you could always find him. He's terrified." "Yeah, well, so am I most of the time." "But not all of the time?" She smiled at him. "Not all of the time. Not now. Now I'm here." Liara was negotiating the line item and overall disposition of Beckenstein. No competitive bidders. She was directly involved with Beckenstein's agents dealing with asset security and dispersal. Krios had been paid up in fees and in good standing. They informed her normally they would keep the estate for him in perpetuity as long as it was paid for, but long-term contracts of that sort were more difficult when there were staff to be considered after a shutdown, and no authorization for restart when he could not be consulted. Reactive communication was a part of his contract, the time frame of contact having expired. His authorization for pay and disposition of staff in emergency was not available. His authorization for several things was not available. With Liara's evidence of foul play, they were willing to make an exception in this case and accommodate her needs. It would, of course, cost her. Commander Shepard's name was not mentioned by anyone. At the moment, this was an investigation into an Alliance official who had been abducted, held captive, and then successfully rescued from the estate by another estate owner who had been concerned for her welfare. Bekenstein was officially grateful for the upstanding behavior of their rescuing citizen, the sort of private citizen to make Bekenstein a wonderful place to live and conduct business. Liara managed the line item contract. They had waivers for personnel and shuttles that would be able to enter and leave the airspace of the estate without claiming citizenship. Of course, for the security of all involved, they would remain in the escorted corridor to avoid inconveniencing other residents. Collision was a risk, and all air traffic direction must be obeyed. Right, collision, not being shot out of the sky. Liara was careful regarding anything about disposition of property, because that could mean people. Bekenstein originally would accept 250,000 credits for the contractor's presence and proxies on Krios' estate for collection of evidence. The contract originally did not allow for removal of evidence from the site. It took another 250,000 credits for evidence and property to be defined. So, 500,000 credits and they could go in. People would be able to leave. The disposition of the evidence collected was negotiated. Liara sent in agents, having gotten a floor plan and the knowledge that staff had been trapped on site for 2 days, unable to obtain transportation off the site without collision risk. So she had witnesses and evidence theoretically. Bekenstein released the lockdown on the property and then charged another 100,000 credits for courtesy, utility, and tech access. They informed her helpfully that with the type of shutdown activated by Krios, his agents, or potentially a saboteur, it was unlikely any technical records remained intact on the site. Liara sent agents that were familiar with the law of Bekenstein. Staff had been trapped, but were not in physical distress. They'd had food and water, had been able to rest. They had not been able to communicate. On interviewing them, they were meek, polite, and terrified. Liara's first concern being the room that Cara had been kept in, they were told that staff had gone upstairs after the lockdown to check to see if Dralafa had been in her room, but the hole in the window had explained why she was not. Nobody had spoken to Dralafa for her entire captivity, according to them, only Ser Krios. Recording crews got in that room, and Liara watched the feed, seeing beautiful Drell appointments, a blood-stained chair, and a blown-out window. The chair held a bookcase next to it, stacked with a neat row of books in English, in Drell, an abandoned plate of cookies, and a spilled glass of what might have been milk. As dungeons went, it was lovely. Dr. Itran had implied she had been dressed in clothing appropriate for a sex worker. She asked the agent to check the closet. 2 closets. One filled with clothing for a male Drell, leathers, and Drell fabric. The next closet was for Cara, and the horror hit Liara hard. Sweet, modest, and entirely sexually inexperienced Cara, who had blushed and flushed if Fleet and Flotilla were mentioned, had worn these clothes for 6 months. Just like the dungeon, they were lovely. They were beautifully crafted, without a doubt expensive, studded with precious gems and metals. Combine 6 of those outfits, and she might have had enough cloth to cover herself in any meaningful way. Oh, goddess, Cara! Liara started to cry. The first independent confirmation of Dr. Itran's quietly stated unwillingness to attempt to obtain a picture of Commander Shepard. Liara closed her eyes and realized oh, goddess, she had to ask now. She had to ask if people had seen a black-haired, violet-eyed woman at the estate of Thane Krios on Bekenstein in the last 6 months. Testimony was trickling in and forming patterns. Her horror began to leak out like blood dripping from a numbed wound, something too deep to feel, something deadly. Yes, I saw her. No, I never spoke to her. We were not to speak to her. She and Ser Krios seemed happy together. No, I did not think she was here against her will. He called her Dralafa, or so I had heard. Drell house staff might know more. I worked at the security checkpoint at the front of the house. Drell house staff very carefully did not know more. The lady of the house was always quiet, gracious, and nafisi. Nafisi, a Drell word meaning style and substance combined, an ideal ascribed to a master of art and craft as applied to living. He only called her Dralafa. The Drell staff rushed to clarify. Sir Krios teases his lady by calling her that. It means be ignored, but she was never ignored. She held his thoughts and his heart each moment she blessed us with her presence. DNA samples taken, staff granted security and offered passage to the Citadel, haunted eyes, and pressed together lips. By the way, there was a museum in the basement. There was a library under construction for the lady of the house, rumors of a ballroom being built for her. Sir Krios enjoyed making his lady happy. She had seemed happy with him. Everyone hoped she was well, such a lovely and kind woman. Nobody asked where Sir Krios was, but very carefully all asked if he was alive, if he would be returning, if they were to be expected to continue with their jobs, which of course they enjoyed as an enriching employment, living in such a beautiful place and serving such wonderful people. There was a healing hole in the back of Cara's neck where a chip had been, and a closet full of... Oh, goddess. Hours passed with the details of the horror being broken down to repeated sentences and ignorance. Sir Krios cast a long shadow, and nobody was going to speak against him. These people were trauma victims in their own right, and Liara authorized passage to the Citadel one by one, protective custody with the assistance of CSEC. The first hit on a woman matching Cara's description came in. A video. Liara closed her eyes, prayed to the goddess, and hit play. One of her agents asked, "Tell me what you saw at Thane Krios' estate regarding the woman I asked about." The camera was focused on a sleek Asari in a Bekenstein-looking environment, the panorama and architecture familiar now to Liara. Everyone's been wondering who she was. We were waiting for Krios to get tired of her and offer to sell. Nobody had asked him yet, though. He's not at all chatty. And with her, he was worse than usual. Never let anybody touch her or talk to her. You know who she is? Right now, please, just tell me what you saw. Right. Your money. You'll find a few hundred people willing to tell the story for free, but for now, sure, we'll do it your way. Now that Krios is gone, there's no harm in telling. I'm sure he won't mind. Krios had parties, once a month, hundreds of people. He suspended them for 2 months, but for the last 4 months, he threw them, and she was with him. Did he tell you her name? No. All the wretch would say was, "She is mine." And that's all anybody ever got out of him about her identity. We stopped asking. He called her some horrid Drell nickname I can't remember. That wasn't the draw, anyway. Lovely girl. Krios has exquisite taste. I suppose it's had, but I can hope he's still alive. Life's more interesting with him alive. His parties will be missed. I wonder if I should take up the tradition. He'd like that. Beautiful estate, like a Drell museum. She was always on his arm. She rarely spoke. I know other people heard her talk, but I never had the pleasure, and she only ever answered him. He did take her upstairs. She paused, with a smile, clearly leading the witness. And what was upstairs? She was. He was. Sex upstairs. Slaves, servants, guests, and this atrocious throne that the former occupant of that estate, Donovan Hawk, kept there. Krios ignored and avoided it for years, hardly ever went there, unfortunately. No fun. But with her, couldn't keep him out of the throne room. He's uncooperative and very Drell. But I will give the man this. He knows how to put on a show. He'd watch, she'd watch, He'd fuck her for hours on that throne. Very enthusiastic man where she was concerned. He'd walk in with her on his arm, push aside whatever bits of nothing, very expensive nothing, mind, that she was wearing, and enjoyed himself very much. Brightened up the place to see him happy. Liara didn't have time to cry. A few hundred people, eager to tell the story. She fumbled with the contact list, called Garrus. He was in the med bay with her, of course, and she didn't have time again. Garrus, please let me speak to Shepard. Garrus tilted the camera to Shepard, who smiled. They'd exchanged a few words of greeting and tearful congratulations, and now Liara saw again the eyes and the lovely girl that people had hoped would go up for auction. Shepard, about the Krios estate, there are hundreds of witnesses we can't control. Cara looked at her with her new face, sympathy and empathy, and a conclusion Liara did not want. No, please, Cara, please, don't. Cara said, I know, Liara. There's nothing I can do about it. I won't have to tell my story. It will be told. Liara begged, please, it's not too late. You should get surgery. Go back to... Cara held up her hand. Liara, it was too late months ago. You have to think about this. Think clearly. Hundreds, if not thousands, know. Rescue workers know. Staff know. Guests know. He knows. There's no keeping this quiet. No, Lal, you can't. I have to, Liara. Think. You can't put this genie back in the bottle. She's out. If I tried to hide it, if I didn't own it, anybody could decide to blackmail me at any point. They could decide to blackmail you. They could decide to blackmail Garrus. I can't do that. My name was Dralafa, and thousands of people know it. What are you going to do, Liara? Kill everyone that saw me? Ask already traumatized staff to lie? Find a surgeon and then kill them when their job is done? That's what he did. I'm not going to be like him. Even if you could, none of that would stop the stories. That won't stop him from deciding when to release anonymous video. Liara wanted to tell this woman what her real name was, and then she couldn't. She couldn't tell her, your name is Cara Fanning, because even Garrus didn't know that. Oh, goddess, please. The camera was wobbly. Garrus's arm with the Omni-tool was shaking. Cara turned her face to him and said like a mother speaking to a child, it's okay. I know what I'm doing. You guys, as usual, are not gonna like it, and I'm sorry about that. I can't risk other people's lives over my privacy. I survived Mindwar. I survived death. I will survive Thane Krios. I'm home, and the people on the ship know my name is Lal Shepard. You're both going to hear a lot. I don't need to hear it. I don't need to say it. I need to get back to being Lal Shepard. I've got work to do. The work I've wanted to do. The work I chose. And I'm not wasting another moment on Thane Krios. That's what he wanted me to do, and he failed. I'm not taking time to have my face change back. I'm not taking time to answer questions. I'm getting back in the fight. Cara didn't reach out to steady the camera. Didn't reach out to Garrus at all. Now the pain of the cut started to be felt. Mortal and deep. The end of things Liara couldn't count or calculate it, but she'd have the rest of her life to count them. 1,000 years to remember if she lived a long life, the life Shepard was determined to give her. Cara said, "Both of you, step out of the way of the flood. Don't try to stop it. Don't try to change it. Just let it go. I'm not going to change my mind, and I can't change what's happened. I had a chip, and I don't remember all of it, but I do remember enough. Don't ask me. Don't think about it. Get back in the real fight as soon as possible. That's what I'm doing. I'll be okay. I want you to be okay." It was like hearing Cara give her own eulogy. She was dead and gone, and Shepard was all that was left, and she was asking them not to mourn the woman they'd loved. The woman they loved. Oh, Goddess, please. Please what? She didn't know.